Hi guys, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And today, guys, I got something a little different for you. It is not something book related. It's a video, which already is something different for you. But if you notice, a couple days ago, or whenever I posted it, I did a Sailing to Sarantium review by Guy Gabriel Kane. And something that is central to that book is the chariot racing and the chariot racing factions in what is called the Hippodrome in Sarantium / Byzantium. And I mentioned in my review about how alive the chariot racing scene felt. And then I was talking to my friend Joanna about it, and it did not quite click for her because she is not well versed in Roman chariot racing the way that I am, nor has she seen Ben-Hur the way that I have. And so I realized that perhaps that is something that other people experience when reading Sailing to Sarantium, that because they were unfamiliar with Roman chariot racing, that they were not able to connect with that scene or think it's as freaking awesome as it actually is. So, while I was talking to Joanna, I decided, you know what, I'm going to do a video dedicated to Joanna, a video for Joanna and others like her about Roman chariot racing, so that, this will be a companion piece to Sailing to Sarantium, if you will. Now, I will say that moments later, Joanna betrayed me. But I'm going to do this anyway because I am a good friend. So I'm going to go ahead and film this anyway, even though I was brutally betrayed only moments after thinking of doing something nice for Joanna, because Alexandria is an altruistocracy. So, without wasting any more time,
Let's get down to business.
let us talk about Roman chariot racing. So, Roman chariot racing was a huge deal. The Romans had chariot races actually long before they had gladiator fighting. Gladiator fighting started as like funeral games in like the 200 somethings, like 260s BC. So gladiator fighting is much newer than chariot racing was. In fact, the fifth king of Rome constructed the first and most well-known chariot track in the Roman world, and that is the Circus Maximus. The Circus Maximus was the largest. It was the largest circus in Rome. The Latin word circus or circus, it doesn't mean with clowns juggling and dancing bears and lions, etc. Circus just means it is both the race track, and the races themselves. So that's what circus means. In Sailing to Sarantium, the races take place at the Hippodrome, capital H Hippodrome. Hippodrome is just the Greek word for circus. It's where chariot racing and horse races took place in the Greek world, and since Byzantium / Sarantium is much more Hellenistic, and they spoke Greek there rather than in the Roman Latin world, they call it the Hippodrome instead of circus, but those two terms are interchangeable, basically. Now, at the Circus Maximus could hold 250,000 people. This is roughly the same size as the Indianapolis Speedway, which is our biggest, NASCAR speedway in the States. It's slightly bigger. It can hold, sometimes up to 300,000 people at Indy. But, I mean, it's close to the size of our largest racetrack. The poor could get in free. And there were, if you're poor, you don't have good seats, and you're in the sun baking all day. Meanwhile, if you're rich, and of course the emperor later, when there was an emperor, gets his own box. The Vestals got their own box, the Vestal Virgins, which are a very revered priestesshood within Rome. And wealthy could also buy, like, awnings. This is the same as going to a water park and spending, $200 to get yourself a cabana, which is really just a covering, so you're not being scorched all day. Also understand that, just like gladiator games, chariot racing did not run every day. It wasn't like you get off of school, your job, and be like, hey, you know what? You want to go see a chariot race today? Like, just like sports aren't running every single day here in America. Chariot racing ran at specific times, depending on who was throwing the games, or for what festival, or, an idol wants to build popularity, so he throws and holds games and pays for them. So yeah, it wasn't every day. There were like periods of time. In Sailing to Sarantium, they're having some kind of festival where they're having chariot races kind of every day. So what is a huge deal in Sailing to Sarantium and was a huge deal in Roman chariot racing are the factiones, which are look at that word. It's faction. And there were originally only two factions, red and white. These were the two original factions. They dress in white or dress in red. This makes them easily identifiable from the stands. If any of you have ever gone to medieval times in the States, you know how they sit you with, like, you're with the black and white knight, you're with the green knight, you're with the blue knight or whatever, and they're dressed in their tabards are that color, so it's easily recognizable from no matter where you are in the stands. Later, two more factions were added, the greens and the blues, and the greens and the blues actually became the most popular factions and just remained the most popular factions basically forever. The Julio-Claudians were, if I am wrong on this, because I did not look it up before doing this, and I could pause it. I could pause it and look it up right now, but I am fairly certain that the Julio-Claudians were big fans of the Greens. If I am wrong, Kyle is right now keyboard warrioring me in the comments. You know what? That's okay, Kyle. If I got this wrong, please let me know. Because I am fairly certain that the Julio-Claudians were fans of the Greens. I am almost 100% certain that Caesar was a Greens fan. And not only are they dressed in those colors, so they're easily identifiable, each one is also associated with a season. Red is associated with summer, white, winter, green, spring, and blue, the fall or autumn, if you're European. I always ask my students to raise their hand what their favorite season is before I tell them which one is which. And man, aren't there a whole bunch of kids who like the frickin' winter the best. I have had more winter kids in the last 3 years than like ever before. What student likes the winter? One, cold. Two, we're still in school. Why would summer not be the choice? I realize it's hot, but we're not in school. Like, what are we doing? And then there's always this one kid that says, I get bored when I'm not in school. That nerd is then escorted to the toilet where he gets his just desserts. So, red summer, blue autumn, green spring, white winter. During the Empire, during the Flavian dynasty, Emperor Domitian, Deus et Dominus, decided that he wanted to add two more factions, the imperial factions, he called them. And so a purple faction and a gold faction were added to the chariot racing, but they were never popular, and they did not last very long. I forget who got rid of them and when, but they were, no one ever wanted to do that. It's like now, what if they added an NFL team? Like, how many people would jump and just bail to this new NFL team that that has no history, or, you know, no one in their family's ever been a fan of this? It would be people who, you know, are tired of being Cleveland Browns fans, I guess, because that's about it. So the Latin word for charioteer is auriga, and the aurigi, the plural, they were almost always slaves. At least they started out that way, just like gladiators. Most gladiators and chariot racers were slaves or prisoners of war, which is functionally the same thing. They could earn their freedom and continue to race, just like with gladiator fighting. They were sponsored, so just because you are a slave owned by the faction, the Factionarius, or the Factionarii, doesn't mean that you didn't get paid, just like gladiators. Like, gladiators, even though they were slaves, could make some bank. They advertising, just like NASCAR has, you know, Tide on the side of the car. The chariot racers were also sponsored, so they could make, like, bank being a good chariot racer. The problem is most of them did not live very long, because chariot racing, chariot racing is much, much, much more dangerous than gladiator fighting. Mostly because gladiator fighting was not always or often to the death. I talked about that in my Sailing to Sarantium review. And chariot racing isn't to the death either, but it's super dangerous and you can die super easily. So chariot racers, they wore like light leather armor and like a light helmet. Everything was built around speed. So just like horse racing now has jockeys who are small, the charioteers, the aurigi, did not wear like heavy protection that might help them should they fall off. They kept it light, just like the chariots were not, they were not like Egyptian war chariots meant to do battle. They were extremely light so that you could, you know, go fast. There were 2-horse chariots called bigai and 4-horse chariots called quadrigai. and some races were with big eye, some were with quadrig eye. It just depended on the race, the day, the circus, etc. I want to show you, I don't know, I'm sure you can do an image search, but you know what? We do things analog here. So let me show you what like a chariot race was like. So this is the arena. This is the track here. This is the starting line, called the Linea Alba. This is the white line. This is where you're trying to get after you complete the amount of races that you need. Over here you have the starting gates. These are the carceres. This is where we get the word incarceration. But these carceres here, there are 12 of them, because since there are 4 factions, you could race 3 of the same team at the same time. So each of the 4 factions could have 3 of the same color team, teaming up and ganging up on others and racing at the same time. But it was drawn by lot, so it was random which of these gates you started at, and that's actually a big deal in sailing to Sarantium, because 2 of the favorites to win get like pretty crappy draws, and obviously the goal is if you want to have the first lot, right? Because then you can immediately take the inside track. Anyone who's played Mario Kart, you want to take the inside track when racing. You don't want to start way over here, because then you gotta get up to there, right? So the carceres are sealed by spring-loaded gates, and there's someone behind there who has a lever that, of course, because the Romans are brilliant engineers, when he pulls the lever, they spring open. And his signal to spring them open is when whoever the editor or the whoever throws the games drops the white cloth. We see this in Sailing to Sarantium as well. The white cloth is called the mappa, and as soon as that is dropped, the guy pulls the thing, and the gates spring open, and they're off. So we actually get the word arena from the hard-packed sand on the track. That's called the harena, and that's where the word arena comes from. So the Circus Maximus is almost 7 football fields in length and less than a single football field in width. So it's a pretty enormous track. Now, this is mentioned a bunch in the book, and this middle thing is called the spina. We get the word spine from this. This is the backbone of the track. This is what they race around. It is decorated. If you watch the scene in Ben-Hur, which is linked below, and you absolutely should, this is decorated, like people would stand here, but I mean, that's dangerous. But this is decorated with like shrines. There's the obelisk, like Augustus brought back an obelisk that was, on there, and, various statues and other like temples and stuff, on the spina that emperors or people could add to it. In Sailing to Sarantium, I think they have a couple statues to Scortius on the spina. But the really, really dangerous thing when it comes to chariot racing are these turning posts called the metai. These are conical, just like posts. They look like big bullets at each end, and this is where the crashes happen, because anyone who's played Mario Kart, you're trying to throw those blue sparks drifting around the corner doing Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, and this is where your wheel will hit, someone will ram you into the turning posts, and you will crash. In fact, they called it, there were so many crashes at the turning post, they called it naufragia, which literally means shipwrecks, because there were so many crashes at those turning posts. And that's where most people met their end, really. So, we have the English word curriculum. Well, a curriculum is actually the Latin word for a lap. So each circus, each race was 7 curricula. It was 7 laps, and the whole race is called a missus. 7 curricula equals 1 missus, and those 7 laps total roughly 4 miles. And multiple races, like 20 races, could be had in a single day. It would go all day on actual race days. Now, laps were counted on either end. So you have the first turn and the second turn. At either end, on one side were these golden dolphins, and there is sand. They're hollow, and there's sand in and you can see this in Ben-Hur. There's sand in the fin, the tail of the dolphin, and there's people who have like a string, and they pull it, and it makes the dolphin curve down, and then all the sand spits out, so now it's top heavy. So it does like this. So everyone on this side can see that 2 dolphins have dove into the sea, and that means that 2 races have elapsed. On the other side, they have eggs. I don't know why I literally don't know why they use eggs. If someone knows why they use eggs, type that down in the comments there. On the other side, it has eggs that they slide up or down. I forget which one is which. because the dolphins are just way cooler. But however many have elapsed, and you see this in Sailing to Sarantium at all. They're actually have to, the dolphins aren't there because dolphins have taken on a pagan kind of iconography context. So dolphins have been outlawed in Sarantium, so they do not use the dolphins to keep track of the races, though they do mention that once they did. And so yeah, the first across the finish line, the white line, after 7 laps wins. The outer guy, they tied their reins around their waist. They hold on them like this, but it's tied around their waist because when you are going that fast and, you know, driving that crazy, it is super easy to lose control of your reins. And so, you know, if they fall out of your hands, you can just pick them up because they're wrapped around. You're just not going to yank you off. But if you only had them in your hand, if you let them go, they're gone. And see ya, those horses are, you know, those horses are done for, or you're not going to be able to control where those horses are going to go. Now, the question the students always ask after I say that is, what happens, and I'm sure you're all thinking it, what happens when they fall off their chariots, or if their chariot wrecks, if the reins are wrapped around their midsection, they're just going to be dragged and run over. And yes, that's true. That often did occur. That is why every Auriga also had in his waistband what's called a falx, which is a curved blade, like a curved dagger, to cut the reins free if they fell off their chariot. Their chariot. We actually see this in the chariot race within Sailing to Sarantium. So the chariot scene in Ben-Hur is amazing, but if you watch slightly before it, you see the whole, what's called the Pampa. It's this big parade where all the charioteers come out, and there's musicians and priests and dancers and acrobats. It's just this huge, they do this like, it's the pre-lap in NASCAR where they just all kind of drive around with the pace car. That's what this is. So they march around so everybody can see them. Ooh, look how awesome that is. Look at the parade, whatever. And then everyone vacates while the chariots go back to their carceres, and then, you know, and then we launch it. And guys, when we're talking about the factions, like, these are like modern day sports teams, and they would fight all the time. Like, they were bitter rivals, especially the blues and the greens. There was constant, like, soccer hooliganism fights in the stands and stuff. They beat each other up all the time. One of the things that Sailing to Sarantium touches on is the Nika riot, where in Byzantium, the blues and the greens kind of united and created this huge riot in the city that had to be bloodily and brutally put down, to where 30,000 people were slaughtered because the blues and the greens just were mad at taxes, mostly. And they were also mad that, like, 2 of their own had been arrested and, you know, weren't released without damage or something. They were super mad about it. Now, obviously, the horses were protected more than anything else. Like your horse, well, I mean, it's your bread and butter, right? And because some of the strategies are, not only are you using all 3 of your teams within the race to gang up on the other ones and strategize, but also, like, doping was really common. Like, you dope the outer guy. If you can, you dope the horses. You do not want a horse to die, because then you are almost certainly going to be murdered or executed when they find out it was you. So you really just want them a little sleepy, like their reflexes are not what they should be. But people tried to dope the charioteers and the horses all the time. People constantly, like civilians, were constantly buying curse tablets that they would pay wizards to curse the opposing faction and their drivers and their horses and whatever. And then the other factions were casting like counterspells. They're playing Magic Blue Deck, just trying to counterspell, paying to counterspell all this stuff all over the place. Sometimes the citizens could buy these tablets that had nails on them and throw them down on the field. Imagine being dragged through that. Guys, this is blood sport. So charioteers, the really good charioteers were celebrities, and 2 of the most famous charioteers of all time were Scorpus and Diocles. And I'm guessing that Guy Gavriel Kay based Scortius in Sailing to Sarantium on Scorpus, even though, I mean, the name is just similar, but they did not race at similar times, and their lives are different. Scorpus died young, for example. But still, like, why call him Scortius? But anyway, Scorpus is the winningest charioteer of all time. In all of Roman history, Scorpus won more races than anybody else. He raced for the greens, and he only raced for the greens. He raced for the greens his entire career, which is, I mean, he started young. He died in a crash with the Metai in a naufragium at age 27, so he died relatively young. But over the course of his career, he won over 2,000 chariot races. So he's the winningest chariot racer of all time. And Gaius Apuleius Diocles. So Diocles holds the record for one, being the highest paid athlete of all time, and two, the racingest Auriga of all time. He participated in more races than any other charioteer. So at 18, he started his career with the white, and then after 6 years switched to the greens, and after 3 years with the greens, he switched to the reds, and he finished his whole career racing with the reds. He raced with the reds for 15 years before he finally retired. He didn't actually die. He retired at the age of 42, having raced a total of like 4,200, almost 4,300 races. This man raced and survived almost 4,300 chariot races, winning something like almost 1,900 of those 4,200. So he did not win as many as Scorpus, but he lived, 15 years longer than Scorpus and raced considerably more bouts than Scorpus did. He has a net worth, if you tried to, adjust it for whatever modern currency, the best guess is that he's worth about $15 billion as far as his pay and advertisement and income was as a charioteer, which is just bonkers, like just insane. There were fewer billionaire athletes when I started teaching this 13 years ago. Now there are, more. But yeah, so Scorpus, winningest charioteer of all time. Diocles, richest and racingest charioteer of all time. So yeah, so that is Roman chariot racing in a nutshell. I hope you will check out the Ben-Hur video below, because it is excellent and just like white-knuckled adrenaline. So yeah, so I don't know if this helps anybody, but hopefully you learned something. That's all for me for today, guys. As always, information about my Patreon and Discord is down in the description, and I'll see you next time, guys.
All right. Okay, hang on. On your mark.
Got it. Woo!
Get set.
Morgan, yeah!
Go. Let's go, boys.